Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now this week's video is another one in the vintage and classic cameras from the past, and it's all about this camera. This is the oldest camera in my collection and it's the most beautiful camera, I would say, in my collection. Now this camera was built 12 years before the start of the First World War in 1914. It was built in the year that the Conservative MP Arthur Balfour became Prime Minister of England. It was built when there were still horse and carts doing most of the deliveries, etc. Motor vehicles were still in their infancy, as were aeroplanes. They were still in their infancy. In fact, we were in the Industrial Revolution. So I get a real kick out of owning a camera in this condition that's 120 years old. And the camera is the Teb No5. Now it's a very rare camera. You won't find a lot of information on the internet about this camera, but it is an absolute beautiful camera. It shoots 1:18 film, or it did originally, and at quarter plate glass plates. It has a bellows. It comes out on the bed of the camera, and here we have the mirrored viewfinder to give you an idea what you get in your composition. And as I say, it's such a beautiful camera. The whole camera body is actually made out of wood, surprising or not, and the metal parts are made of aluminium, brass, chrome. It's just no expense spared. I think this would have been a very expensive camera in its time. Now it's got a little name plaque at the top. Now I don't think they were the manufacturer, they were the people that sold these cameras. I think this camera, from what I can ascertain, was built in Germany, but I do stand corrected on that. If anybody else knows, please let me know. The bellows on this camera, I'm positive they're original from the pictures I've seen. The red bellows, they're in perfect condition. You know, 120 years old and in perfect condition. And I think these are probably made out of calf leather, and that's why they're in such good nick. There's no holes whatsoever in them. They're just like new, actually. Now, when I bought this camera, I had to make a few little adjustments on it. This had broken off, so I've had to fix that back on, although that's detachable. But other than that, there wasn't very much wrong with it. The shutter was a little bit stiff, so I put a little WD-40. I don't know if you should do that, but the shutter seems to work fine now. So I don't know how accurate it is, but you just cock it like that, and the shutter fires on this Unicom shutter. But the problem with this camera, the reason I got it cheap, was the fact that it shot 1:18 film and quarter plate glass plates. Now the 1:18 film, it came with its original spool, is this size, and this is 120 roll film, which is that size, and you can see there's a big difference in the size of the film. As I say, you can't get this film. You probably could make your own glass plate negatives to go in this camera, but it's the holders that you're going to find difficult to get a hold of, so you can use the glass plates. So for me, I'm only interested in using it with film. Now, over the last 6-7 years, it's been stood on a display shelf because it's such a, as I say, such a beautiful looking camera. But I'd always really wanted to be able to take a photograph with it and just see what sort of images it produces. So I decided to convert it without doing anything that will destroy the camera, but convert it to shoot 120 roll film, and that's what I've done. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I converted it to use 120 roll film. And I'll also show you how the shutter mechanism works on this camera. It's absolutely beautiful. And just basically show you around the camera. And then once I've done that, I'm going to go out with the camera, because I've not put any film through it yet, and just test it, just to see if I've got the frame spacings okay. Because the red window is for 1:18. There's no window for 120. So I'm going to have to open the back of the camera and measure it out. So I don't get overlapping frames. I've done all that, but I need to test it. Now once I've done the test and everything works, it seems to be working okay, I'll go out again, I'll take a few more shots, see how those pictures turn out, come back and develop it, see what they're like, and just to see if there's any more fine adjustments that need making, and then go out again and really see what I can, what sort of pictures this camera, this old lens can produce. So let me show you how I converted the camera first, and then I'll just show you how the shutter works, etc. So first of all, let's take a look at this beautiful shutter on this camera. It was conceived by a company called Bausch& Lomb. It's called a Unicom diaphragm shutter. Now the cylinder on the left hand side is where you connect the air release to trigger the shutter, and the one on the right hand side, the piston there, is the one that governs the shutter speeds. Bausch & Lomb introduced this Unicom two-bladed shutter in 1897. And it was a very well regarded shutter, a very reliable shutter, and to say that it's working to this day 120 years later is testimony to the quality of it. Now to fire the shutter, let's say we want to go to 1 second. There's a little lever at the side, you probably can't see that, but it just pulls out and you click it into place and it allows you to turn the actual, rotate the shutter to set the shutter speed. Once you've done that, unhitch or unclick that latch, cock the shutter, and you can fire it two ways. You can fire it by this little lever here, that's 1 second, or you can use the air release, and that goes on at the bottom there. Cock the shutter, and when I press the air release, the shutter fires. So it's a very, very simple but reliable mechanism. The shutter speeds on this run from 1 second right up to 1/100th of a second, and it has a B and a time mode. So it's a really, really nice shutter. Now let's talk about the shutter itself. This was one problem that I had to overcome to be able to use modern films. The shutter, as I said, is two-bladed. There's two blades that close, but when I shone a torch through the shutter itself, I could see that it was transparent and it was red, much like you see on the back of these old cameras where you look through the red window to see the frame numbers. Now film in that era when this camera was built wasn't that sensitive to red light, so you could get away with it, but using modern films it's going to fog the film. So the way I got round it was to unscrew the front element and then using some matte black paint carefully paint the two shutter blades with the hope that it wasn't going to make them stick. So I painted them and tested it with a bright light, and I could see no light getting through. So that worked and the shutter wasn't sticking, so I got away with that one. But that was one of the problems that I had to overcome to use modern film in this camera. The only other problem with this shutter is that over the years it's parted slightly where the shutter comes from both sides and overlaps, and there's a slight gap. And I'm hoping that light is not going to get through that gap to the film, but I will not know that until I've tested it. So fingers crossed that I've stopped light getting through to the film and the shutter's closed. So that's the Unicom shutter, a beautiful shutter, as I say, very well regarded in its time. It was one of the top shutters you could buy, and as I've said before, it's still working now, so the quality of these shutters must have been very, very high. So a word or two now about the actual lens itself. It's an uncoated lens, as you would imagine from that period. I've measured the focal length and I think it's somewhere between 110 and 120 millimetre in focal length. Now the lens is what they call a rapid rectilinear lens, and apparently it's quite a famous photographic lens design. The apertures run on this lens, and you adjust them with this lever, run from f8 right up to f44. And this lens was actually introduced by John Henry Delamere in 1866, and the way the lens is designed, it's supposed to greatly reduce from previous designs radial distortion, and it said that it was a big improvement over the famous Petzval lens. So that's the shutter and the lens. Just one other thing, that there is a movement on this camera on the front standard. There's two little screws either side. If you undo those, slacken them up, you can move the lens up or down, and then to set it you just do those screws. Now I probably won't use that because I'm not looking through the ground glass screen and I'm not going to see that effect, so I'll just set it about halfway at either side and just use that mirrored viewfinder to get the composition. So that's the lens and the shutter. Let me now show you how I converted the camera to shoot 120 roll film. First of all, this is the back of the camera, and we can see if we're using film, we've got the little red window there to read the frame numbers on the 118 film. But this is a focusing hood. You undo that latch and pull it out, and there we've got the ground glass screen. Now you can't see anything through that because I blanked it off on the other side to create a pressure plate for the film. But if you were using glass plates, you would use that screen to focus the subject in front of you. Once you've got that in focus, you would close that back, undo that latch there, push the whole back off, then put in the glass plate holder, take the exposure. Once that's done, take the glass plate holder out and then put the back on, and for the next shot you just repeat the procedure. But as I say, I'm not using glass plates, I'm using film, so I keep this one tightly shut. There's a little latch there. So I'll show you inside the back of the camera door and see what I've done there to make it a pressure plate. So this is the inside of the back door, so to speak. This is where the ground glass screen was. I've created or made out of some mylar, thin mylar sheeting, a pressure plate, and that's covered the whole of the ground glass screen so no light can get in. So when I close this back, bring the camera back over, once I close that, it puts pressure on the film and hopefully it's going to keep it flat. So that's how I created that and stopped light getting in. Now the next thing was to be able to get the 120 roll film into the camera, and I'll show you how I've done that. So this is the back of the camera, this is the film gate. Now the 118 film was a lot wider than the 120 roll film is. So you can see the spool here, that one there. And the negative on the 118 would have run where my fingertip are along there on the film gate. So you can see you'd have a very big negative. Now because I want to use this 120 roll film, which is a lot narrower, I have to reduce that width there. And I've done that by taking some careful measurements and sticking this thick or strong cardboard to top and bottom, and leaving it wide enough so when the 120 film goes over, it just overlaps slightly where the frame numbers are. Now the actual size of this, obviously it's 6 centimetres, but the width is 10.5 centimetres. But I'm only going to use or scan at 6x9, but I'm not going to mask these areas off to 6x9 because I feel it'll give me a little bit of leeway when I come to cropping when using a viewfinder like you have on this camera. They won't be that accurate, so that'll give me a little bit of breathing space. Now to fit the spool, the 120 spool into the camera, I'm going to use these. These are from a company called CameraHack. Now this one, you get three of these that are just round, circular holes, and then you get one that's slotted. And the one that's slotted goes where the actual wind-on lever is. And all it does is extends the width of the spool itself. So we connect it to the end, and then I'm going to struggle with this, I know I will, but bob it into the camera, make sure that it connects into that spool there so it's turning, and then do the same on the top there without dropping it, and then lifting that little knob up and reconnecting it, and now that's connected now. So with that connected, I need to go to the other side and put the film in. So I've got a test roll here, and you do exactly the same at this side. Fit the spool with the connector at one end, and then bob that into the camera there. Sorry, that way around, to the camera at the top there, and then put one in at the bottom, and then just lift that. There's little catches that lift the connectors, and then just make sure it clicks into place. And now that's actually in place now. So that's the film, and as you can see, I've put foam either side, and that's to stop the film from unwinding itself. I feel that if I didn't have this, it would be harder to wind on, and if I didn't have it this side, when I get to the end of the roll, when you open the back, it probably uncurls itself and you'll get light leaks. So that foam just keeps the roll nice and tight. So that's something else I've had to do. Now, to wind the film on, you have to pull it across like you would any normal camera now, and then put it into the slot at this side, then wind the film on. Now I've done this before, so I know where to start the film, and I'm going to use the start mark on the film and wait till it aligns with that roller there. So you can see it's just overlapping on these spaces that I put in to narrow the gap. Now I've estimated that if I wind on 2 full turns and half a turn, I'll come to the first frame. But first of all, I've got to find out where the film is. Now I've experimented, and I found out that it's 8 full turns. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I'm on the first frame now, and then, as I say, I've calculated then every 2.5 turns takes me to the next frame. So it will be 1 full turn, 2 full turns, and half a turn, and that takes me to the next frame. And I've calculated, working this way, I should get 6 exposures that are 10.5 centimetres long by 6 centimetres high. So that's how I've done it. Hopefully the test images are going to work out. The only thing that I'm going to be looking for is light leaks and making sure that the spacing's okay. Now the other important thing that I had to do with this camera, and I'll show you that now. Now, because this camera doesn't have any sort of viewing system like an SLR where you can see it coming in and out of focus, or a rangefinder where the patch comes together to tell you that they're in focus, with these cameras the only way that you can set a distance is by using these scales on either side of this bed. This one is for film, and it's in feet and meters, so you can take your choice there. That's for the glass plates. I won't be using that, so this is the one that I'm concentrating on. Now this has 2 little screws in. If you undo those, you can slide this scale up and down a little bit. And the way I set this camera up so I could get focus was to get infinity focus correct. And to do that, I placed a ground glass screen over the film gate, used my loop and pulled out the bellows until the subject that I'd set at infinity. Now it doesn't have to be miles away, probably 1,000 yards would do. That will give you infinity focus. I pull the bellows out until the actual subject comes into focus, and then I move that scale, and there's a little pointer at the back of this standard that points to this scale, and I set this movable scale to the infinity mark there. Now once I've done that, hopefully that I've got that focus correct, all the other distances should also be correct, or I'm thinking they will be. But when I use this camera, I'm going to use it well stopped down, just to make sure that I'm going to counteract any error in the focusing. But I won't know until I've taken the pictures. But that's how I've set the focus, and it is really important when using these type of cameras where you haven't got a viewing system. Having said that about the actual focusing on this camera, it does have a focusing system, but you have to use the glass plates using the ground glass screen to set focus. Put the glass plates in and take the picture. But when you're using film, there's no other way than using these scales. So as I say, it's very important to try and get that correct. Right, I'll get the camera loaded with some film now, and I'll go take some test pictures and just see how we go from there. Right, that's the camera on the tripod. So I'm going to get it all set up and take these test images after all my modifications on this camera and see if it works. So drop the bed, pull the bellows out. The first shot, I'm going to photograph this shed. I'm going to try using a scale here on the camera just to set the distance, see if that's somewhere near accurate. I'm not sure if it will be, but I'm going to stop the lens well down just to make sure I get it in focus. So I'm going to use my rangefinder to give me the distance and then set it on the scale. Get a distance about the same as the camera to the subject. Use the rangefinder. That's giving me around about 10 feet, so I'll set that on the camera, pull the lever out, 10 feet, then take a light reading. And that's saying a quarter of a second at f/45. So for this camera, take the lens cap off, stop the lens down to f/44, and then I'll set the time to, I can only use 1/5 of a second. Got the shutter, got the focusing set, and then take the picture. Just putting that over because I don't want any light to get through this this shutter, which I don't think's working exactly right as it should do. So that's the first one. I'll take another one now, and I'll probably take about 4 shots just to see how the camera's winding on, if the frame spacing's okay. I'd rather have it wide than overlapping, and generally to see if there's any light leaks, etc. So the next shot I'll just take it a bit further up in the garden, and I'll use it this time probably in the landscape format. Now for this photograph, it's just this garden here, just to test how sharp I can get the picture. And I put the camera in the landscape format, and this time I'm going to move the bellows to the infinity mark that I set earlier, and I'm going to use infinity focus. The lighting is just the same as it was for the previous shot, and I'm using this a contour. Now this is a viewfinder. It's a viewfinder where you look through it with both eyes and you see frame lines. Now this is 35mm. Now I'm shooting approximately 6:9, but I think it will give me an idea of my composition, because the 6x9 35mm are similar. I'm going to use that. As I say, the lighting's the same, so I'm going to be stopped down to f/44 there. I cock the shutter, I'm on 1/5 of a second, and then I've just to wind the camera on, and to wind it on I've set it for 2.5 times to the next frame, and hopefully I won't get any overlapping frames. So I'll wind it on, 1, 2, 2.5. So that's set now. And just take the shot, take the lens cap off. And that's it. It's the second shot. See if we can find something else now. Now I'm just going to take a photograph here of these reflections, this flooded area. A little bit darker here. Set the camera up. So again, for this one I'm going to use infinity focusing, so don't move that. The exposure is different on this. I took a reading and the exposure is 1 second, so you have to lock the shutter in place with that little lever there. Then I can turn the dial to 1 second, unlock that, cock the shutter, set to f44, infinity focus, take the lens cap off, and then press the shutter button. And hopefully I've got that picture. Right, I'll take one more, and then if everything, get the film developed, if everything's turned out, I'll put another roll of film in, and then that'll tell me how many frames I can get out of the roll, whether the exposures is working okay, and if I'm getting reasonably sharp pictures. Keeping in mind this camera's you know, 120 years old, so I can't expect too much. So I'll go just find another area with lots of detail in it and just see how the lens performs. Again, stop right down. No shot. It's a little bit darker here, so the exposure for this one is going to be 2 seconds, and I'm going to use the lens cap for this, so I'm just going to time it, pull the lens cap off, 1001, 1002, and bob it back on and see if that works. But I've got to set the shutter to time, so lock it, move the dial to time, unlock it, cock it, and then make sure it's on infinity. I'm going to use that, f44, and then again I've used the contour viewfinder to give me an idea of the composition. So take the exposure. What you have to do with this is press it once and it's set now, it's open. Pull the lens cap off, 1001, 1002, and now it's shut. So get these developed now, get these developed, and see if they've turned out. I hope they have, because it's a lovely old camera. It's a shame not to be able to use it. So that was the test images. I'm quite pleased with those. Just while I remember, when I showed you how I converted this camera for 120 film, one of the things I didn't show you was I actually put some light foam seals around where the door shuts on the camera body, so the door is sealing on those foam seals, and hopefully I shouldn't get any light leaks. Well, I didn't get any light leaks looking at the test shot, so that were good. The frame spacing was a little bit wide. I think I'll change it from 2.5 turns to 2 turns, 2 full turns, and that should give me a nice gap between the negatives, so I'm not overlapping, and that way I shall get 6 images from one roll of 120 film. One of the things I'm thinking of changing, but I might go out with the camera one more time just to try that, is removing this contour viewfinder to free up the cold shoe, so I can put on there a spirit level, because I did find it difficult getting the camera level, and replacing this with the original prism finder that sits on the camera bed to do the composition. I think that will probably work better than this. So I'll just go out with the camera and try it as it is with the test images one more time, but I think that's something that I'm going to change. So I'll get the camera now, and I'll just go in hotly and take a few more images and see how we go with those. So I've got the camera set up, and I'll just check the composition using the contour viewfinder. Maybe twist the camera a little bit that way. That looks okay, that. Then I've pulled the lens out and I've set it to infinity, that mark there, and the exposure, I've taken a reading from this part of the tree and it's given me 1 second at f/45. I'm framing the picture using this as on the edge of the frame, and then these branches coming along at the top, and then the other frame at the other side. So we've got the bridge that's set between those two darker side areas, and hopefully that might work. And there's a nice reflection on the water now of the bridge. So I need to really, I think what I'll do is I'll set the exposure to time, and you pull the lens cap off for this, rather than pressing the shutter. I might shake the camera. So cock the shutter on time, it's open now, and then use the lens cap and just time 1 second. Stand to one side. 1001, and put that over the top, then shut the shutter. Then I've got to advance the film. I'll do that with the camera off 2.5 times, and then I'm on to my next frame. So that's the first shot with it. Move on and see if we can find anything else. So for this picture, it's the second picture. I'm going for the reflections and the arches and the bridge. I get the church in the background. I've taken a light meter reading and it's 1/2 second at f/45. I've set this to f/44 and set it to infinity. So I've got the shutter set to 1/2 second, and the take the lens cap off and take the shot. So that's the second shot. It's a beautiful camera, it really is. So much fun in using these cameras. You just never know what you're going to get, and it's just you're really having to work to get the picture. I really enjoy using these old cameras. Right, that was the second, and see if I can find anything else for the third shot. I'm not sure, I might come out another day, but we'll just see. I've just taken this picture. I had to do it quickly because I got somebody walking at the side of these old cottages. So that's sort of the angle I'm looking at. A little bit narrower side to side. The exposure for this was 1/2 second at f/44. I've wound on to the next frame. I always remember to do that, otherwise I'm going to double expose, and that's what I don't want. So I think that's it. I will call it a draw for today, and a couple of more exposures for another day. I might even put another roll in. So that's it for this evening. As I say, the light's really starting to go down now, so go home and have some tea. So that was the second lot of test images you've just seen. I thought I wouldn't take any more. I'd just develop those 3 negatives just to make sure that everything's working as it should do before I do any more videoing. And I'm so happy that I've got this camera working again, although not with the original film or glass plates, but with 120 roll film. But it's now doing what it should do, is take pictures, and I'm highly delighted that I've got it working again. The only problem that I saw with the pictures, there were no light leaks. I was quite happy the way the shutter was working. I got some well exposed pictures, but in the first test and the second test I noticed that I was getting like a slight double image, not on every picture, but on about 3 of them, and I couldn't work out what was causing that. It wasn't the infinity focus, so I had a good look at the camera, and it was this bar this side that was loose. There's a bolt underneath and that had come loose, and consequently when I was pressing the shutter it was moving this bar and I was getting this slight double image. Now it didn't really spoil the pictures, they're still okay, but it shouldn't be like that. So I've tightened these the bolt underneath, and I've actually glued it so it's now really sturdy, and I'm not going to use this button again. I'm going to use it with the air release, and that'll make sure that I don't get any movement on the front standard to cause that problem again. So that's the main thing that I noticed on the camera. Otherwise I don't think there's anything really I need to do. The infinity focus seemed fine, and I've decided on my the final setup with the camera. I'm going to use the original viewfinder there at the front and work it with the contour viewfinder. I can work those two together to get my composition, and then I've also mounted my rangefinder on top of the contour viewfinder. It has a culture on the top, so it's all now in a compact unit. So I'm really looking forward to going out with it again and not testing but taking images with this camera. Now the final thing that I did with the camera, and it's just a little tip for everybody if they don't know, I've treated the leather bellows, and the body is actually leather on this camera, with this stuff. It's called Neat's Foot oil. It's an oil that's used for leather. It feeds it and it gives it colour, and I've done that on the bellows and on the body, and it just to make the bellows more subtle so they're not going to get dry and cracked, and it just keeps the body in good condition. So that's a tip. If you've got the old cameras and the leather, give them a little wipe over it. Only takes a little bit. Just wipe it over the camera and polish it up, and they do come up beautiful. So I'm ready now to put another roll of film in the camera and go out and take pictures now, knowing that the camera's working okay. And I'll show you the pictures after I've done after I've developed the negatives, and I'm sure I can get some better images than the last 6 that I've shown you out of this camera. Now I've got everything set up correctly. So I'm back now after this morning's outing. Finished that roll off that I started the other night on Ilkley Moor, and you know, I can tell you I'm so happy after all the anticipation and testing and thinking, is it going to work, is it going to work, and lo and behold, in front of me is 6 beautiful negatives. I'm so happy that the camera's produced images with no light leaks. The frame spacing's okay, although I think if I fine adjust the wind on after each exposure, I will end up getting 7 exposures on one roll of 120 film. So I'm going to get these scanned in now and edit the pictures and then show you the video of me taking each picture, and hope you're going to enjoy that. And I can't tell you how happy I am that I've got this old camera working, and it's as I said before, it's doing what it should do. It was designed to do. It's taking pictures again, and for me, I'm getting such a big kick out of doing this. This is the fun of film photography. Right, I'm up on Ilkley Moor again, and I'm going to take a picture of these rocks. I just love the shapes of them, and I'm just waiting for some more side lighting just to catch them a little bit. I don't know if it's going to work. I've got the camera all set up. I've got the air release connected. I'm setting it at infinity. I've used the contour viewfinder and this glass prism finder to get the composition, and I think I'm okay for that. So I've just got to wait now for a little bit more light and take the exposure. I think the exposure is going to be around the 1 second mark, so I will use the air release this time rather than pressing the button here. That'll avoid me getting this double imaging. So just wait for some light now. And as I say, it's not so much finding texture and everything in these pictures or detail, it's about the shape. Right, these people came and sat on the rock, and I stopped waiting for the light, and I thought this would make a more interesting picture, because we're going to have these dark rocks and we're going to have these human shapes outlined against the rocks. So I took that instead of waiting for the sun. Now the exposure was 1 second at f44, and I set the lens to infinity. It's really starting to get a little bit dull now on the Ilkley Moor. Might just go up to the CameraHack pub right up there, see if I can get a picture of that. Right, got the camera set up to take the photograph of the CameraHack hotel, and I've positioned the camera so I'm getting this leading line from the road on the right hand side and the pub more to the left hand side, something like that. Now I'm just waiting now. The sun is, as it always does for me, goes behind a cloud, so I'm just going to wait until hopefully the sun will peek its head through that cloud and put some light onto the building itself. I've taken the light reading. I think it's going to be around about, again, 1 second at f44, so just have to wait and see now. Hopefully that sun will poke its head at some stage from behind those dark clouds. So I've just taken this shot. The exposure was ½ a second at f44, so hopefully that's going to turn out. Got some nice light on the CameraHack pub. Right, just got a picture here with the buildings and the flags, and place the sun behind the flag, and we get the shape of the CameraHack rocks. The exposure was 2 seconds at f44, and I used infinity focus. So wind the camera on, and I think that will be the session for this evening. Right, another day. I've got another 2 or 3 frames left on the camera. I think I've got 3, but I've just got to see when I develop the film whether I get 6 or 5 frames on one roll. And I'm going to photograph this tree today. This is one of the pictures. It's out in blossom, nice now, and I've set the distance using the rangefinder. It's telling me around about 30 feet. So I've set that on the scale on the camera underneath, just up there. Set the aperture to f32, which it's set, and I've set 1/5 of a second because I can't go on this camera to 1/8, and I'm going to use the air release this time rather than pressing the button here. I've composed the picture by using the viewfinder that came with the camera. Don't know if you can see that. That's how I've composed the picture, and hopefully it's going to be something like. So I've just got to wait for a little lull in the wind, because I'm shooting a slow shutter speed. I don't want too much blur, so I'll just hang about and just wait till the wind drops. So this is the 5th picture. Quite like the way the hill railings are going up and the shadows on the path, and I think it might make a nice black and white photograph. The composition I'm going to do is set so the fence at the bottom is in the bottom left hand corner, and as the path goes up it goes to the right top corner of the picture. Got the camera set in the vertical format. I've taken the light reading, and it's 1/4 of a second. I'm going to use f44 on this to get the maximum depth of field. This bottom part might go out of focus, I'm not sure, but with this camera, as I keep saying, I've got to use 1/5 because I don't have the 1/4 of a second setting. So I've set the camera to the infinity mark, and got the shutter speed at 1/5, so cock the shutter, got the air release on, take the lens cap off and then fire the shutter, and that's the 5th photograph. Now I'm not sure whether I'm going to get another 6, so I will try it. If I don't try it, I'll never know, so I'll move on, see if I can see something else, and see if we can get this 6 picture on this roll of 120 roll film. Right, hopefully the 6th shot if it turns out. So I've got the camera framed up again in the vertical format, and I just love the way the white tree, I don't know what to call it, contrasts with the darker background of the fern. I'll try and show you the composition again. I don't know if you can see this, but that's the sort of composition I'm getting with this viewfinder. I've taken a light reading, it's 1/8 of a second at f32. It's going to be 5th on this camera, and this is a 6th shot, and hopefully I'm going to get that out of the roll, but we'll see after I've developed it. So I'll take the shot now. Right, that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it and got to this part. It's been a long video, but I really wanted to share my story of Me and Teb and how I got this 120-year-old vintage camera working again, using 120 roll film and not the 118 that you can't get nowadays. But you know, the experience I got from this camera beats any other camera in my collection. I've just absolutely loved using this camera. Yes, it's slow. You have to think about everything. You have to think about composition, exposure, depth of field, etc. But that's not a bad thing. It makes you think about what the picture that you're taking, and the fact that you're only getting 6 or maximum 7 images on one 120 roll of film again slows you down. And I think because of that, it makes you it helps you take better pictures. So as I say, using the old cameras, although they're slow, it's not a bad thing. Now, when I look at the last 6 pictures that I took, I was absolutely blown away with the quality that this old 4-element uncoated rectilinear lens can produce. I never expected it. And you know, when I look at some of the pictures from some of the more modern cameras, especially some of the digital ones, where they're super multi-coated, the computer corrector for distortion, etc. They just can't give the look that these old classic lenses give. They give a softer, although you get the contrast, it's just a softer look to them. It's hard to define, but I just love the tonality that these lenses can produce. So as I say, it is a camera that I'm going to use quite a lot more. Now, out of the 6 pictures that I took, I'm going to put one on eBay for auction to help support my channel. All the funds go back into to me buying film and chemicals, etc. And I'll just focus on it. It's this one here. It's the last picture that I took, where I took a picture of this white tree behind the dark fern behind it. And this picture is all about texture, really, and also about the light and dark, how the dark and the light contrast. And I printed it on Epson cold press bright paper. It's a matte paper. It's got a lovely texture. The picture itself is 18 inches tall by 12 inches wide. I printed it with a warm tone that, for me, adds to the feel of an old picture, and it'll come signed and titled. So if you want to help support the channel, go to the link in the description to the auction and put a bid on. So as I say, I'll just focus again. That is the end of the video. I hope you did enjoy it, and I hope it's inspired you to go out and try some of these old or very old vintage cameras. So if you like the video, please give me a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel. And as I always say, stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next video.